You also you co-authored a book, Smart Money, Smart Kids, and I have a 5-year-old. What should I be teaching my 5-year-old right now about money? And then because I made a lot of mistakes in my 20s with money. How do I prevent her from making some of those same mistakes?
Well, I'll just say a little word of encouragement to that end point, because I think a lot of people, and I have 2 kids of my own. They're still 3 and 1, so they're younger. But I look at them and mistakes I've made, whether it's with money or other things, and I'm like, I want them to learn those lessons, but I so don't want them to have to go through that pain. And so I really believe, in my family's story, my parents filed bankruptcy the year I was born. And so I look at that, I'm like, that's the worst of the worst, right? You're at the bottom of the bottom. And I don't believe I have to do that to live out good principles with money.
You're not just going to go out and file for bankruptcy.
That's right, just for fun. Why not? Yeah. So all that to say, your kids do not have to make the mistakes that you've made. I don't believe that. So a 5-year-old, tactically speaking, you don't have to make it complicated. Some people
I've been showing her what a SEP IRA is, the difference between that and a Roth.
I know. Well, and Dave Ramsey's my dad, and so people assume growing up with Dave Ramsey as my dad is that we had mutual fund parties, right? And budget camps all the time. And so, you don't have to do that by any means. So for a 5-year-old, simple. I always tell parents to teach them where money comes from. And money comes from work. And so for us growing up, we were never given an allowance. We were always on commission. So you work, you get paid. You don't work, you don't get paid.
God, I love that.
And it's good because you meet 35-year-olds who don't know that, right? It's a good lesson to learn at 5. So teaching them where money comes from, and then doing 3 things with money, and even getting 3 envelopes. And you mark it give, save, and spend. And once they earn that money, you do it in that order. And whatever percentage you want, I'm not that legalistic, so you can just do whatever percentage that you decide to as parents. But you give something first, you save something second, and you can spend last. So you're building really all 3 of those money muscles. And as adults, if you think about it, whether it's investing or whatever you're doing, those are really the 3 things you can do with money: give, save, and spend. And so starting that early is huge, because I meet people who can save and spend like no one else, but they're not givers. They live their life like this. Or you meet people that give everything and spend everything, and they're broke. They can't afford food, right? And so, you balancing out all 3 of those things. And a 5-year-old, they can grasp it, and that's the encouraging thing. They can get it.
I love how you all encourage to give. That is the number one thing that you always list. Because when I think of some of the other programs or things, especially growing up, I feel like in the 90s was that prime time for the infomercial of "I will make you rich,"
yes. Real estate,
right? Exactly. And no one ever talks about that. And ultimately, that's what Josh and that's what we want to help other people do.
I love that.
It is. It truly is our mission. It's funny, people all the time, they're like, "Ryan, where is this minimalist thing going?" And, really, I don't know where it's going. But I'll tell you where I want it to go. No, ultimately, we all need some security. We need to feel some safety for ourselves before we feel like we can start giving to other people.
Absolutely.
And I think minimalism is a nice tool that helps us to get to that place where we can feel like we have enough. We can be content. We can be satisfied. And once we have that feeling, then we can start looking outwardly to our friends, family, community in contribution. So thank you so much for sharing that and putting that first.
Oh, absolutely. Because it really is the key to, And I'm pretty hardcore on it, and so are we. We talk about when you're doing your budget that the very first line item is giving, and I talk to almost 8 out of 10 people will say, "Oh my gosh, that's so great, Rachel, but if I don't do that, I'm not able to pay X and Y, Z," because a lot of people are tight with their budget. But I'm like, okay, but you're giving Comcast $100 a month. Do you know what I mean? It's where are your priorities? And you really have to think about that. It's not always a math issue. It's a heart issue. And I love John D. Rockefeller. His quote is one of my favorites. He said, "I never would have been able to tithe," which is give 10%. "I never would have been able to tithe the first $1 million I ever made if I didn't tithe my first salary, which is $1.50 a week." And people think all the time, if I just had more money, I would give. But I'm telling you, if it does not become a habit in your life, it gets harder the more money you get.
It absolutely does. I remember being back in the corporate world, at sort of the apex of what I earned in the corporate world. I was managing 150 retail stores. I made a couple $100,000 a year, but I was giving functionally nothing. and it was because I was outspending everything that I made. I made good money, but spent even better money, so I just didn't have it to give because I didn't budget accordingly, but B, I just felt like I'll get to it one day. If I'm making 200,000 now, I can definitely give someday if I make 400,000. That's the magic number that you can give. But of course, when I walked away from the corporate world, I made about 90% less. My first year, I made $23,000, and I gave more that year than I did when I made 90% more than that, and it's because I made it a priority to do so, and it's still a priority for us now. And then also to encourage other people to give as well, because when you compound that giving, I see that that's when you can really change communities, when you can change people's lives.